How you doing? Feel good? Who are you wearing a dress for? Okay, I want you to listen intently tonight, because when God has something to say that's relevant, we all need to listen. And I think tonight you're going to find that what I'm about to share with you is relevant to the way we feel and see ourselves. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for your presence. We thank you, Lord, for your goodness. We thank you that in a moment in time you stretched your arms out to embrace us and cause us to come into your presence. We became your children and you became our Father. And Lord, tonight, my prayer tonight, Father, is that you will make yourself known as Father. You will make yourself known as Father. Amen. Amen. There's a guy, anyone heard of a guy called Lucifer? Right? Now Lucifer, when we hear that name down here, we immediately think of the devil, don't we? Well, before he became the devil, he was Lucifer. And as Lucifer, he was an angel that was set on the mountain of God. He was majestic. He had the finest of robes. His vestments were covered in the best of jewellery and gold, rubies and sapphires. He was the most majestic of angels in heaven. He knew the Father's love, he knew the Father's presence because he was created sinless, and he lived in the presence of the Father because God was Father at the beginning, and he will be Father at the end, and he will never cease to be Father. And so Lucifer lived in the presence of the Father, totally sinless, under allness of God's love. He experienced that totally. I grew up in a small country town just over the border called Arndale, and I was devoid of a father's love. So when I became an adult, I had no idea what a father was. When I was 17, I decided I was going to go and join the army, which I did. And I joined the army for one reason: I wanted to get away from Arndale. I wanted to get away from Arndale because family to me meant pain, and it meant hurt, and it meant a loveless place. Because that's the void that I grew up in. My mother was a very angry lady. If you met her, if she was around now and I introduced you to her, you would go, my God, don't upset that woman. She was 4'11", but she was 19 foot high when her anger erupted. And that's the sort of environment that I went away from. And I thought, if I go and join the army, at least I'll find out who I am. I'll build myself an identity, I'll get myself a reputation, and I'll know who I am. You've ever heard the saying, like father, like son? You ever heard that? Well, I went and joined the army to get away from my father's reputation, only to find that I was doing the very thing that he did, because he was at El Alamein in Tobruk in the Second World War. So he was a soldier, and I was a leave baby. You know what a leave baby is? The guy comes home from the war, he and the girl have sex, the baby is deposited in the womb of the lady. 9 months later, the person is born. So my father was in that age, in that era where shame was the main thing that came on a family when somebody was pregnant out of wedlock. And so it was the dumb thing to get the shotgun. You've heard of shotgun weddings? Well, they were literal. and you were at the end of the shotgun. You marry her or I pull the trigger. So my father was forced to marry my mother, and then he took off and went down to the Batlow in New South Wales, shacked up with another lady down there, had 6 kids by her, and I never saw him. I can't ever remember him talking to me. The only thing I knew about him was he had black curly hair. That was all. And we never spoke about him in our family. And so, when I came to the Lord at the age of 31, it was at the time when I was totally suicidal and out of control. And I came into this experience of Jesus Christ. And Jesus was very powerfully active in my life. And the Holy Spirit was very powerfully active in my life. And my water baptism was a powerful thing. But one of the things that I didn't know was, despite all that I had a Father who loved me. I had a Father in heaven who loved me. Personally. I didn't know that. And I didn't know that for another 20 years of ministry. 2001 I was at a conference. Anyone heard of a guy called Jack Frost? We brought Jack Frost out from South Carolina to have a conference. And I got to know Jack very well. I spent a lot of time with him. I was his chaperone and one thing and another. So we did a lot of talking and a lot of exchanging. And his story was very similar to mine in a different way, but pretty much the same. And in the middle of one of Jack's talks, he came over to me, like I was sitting in the front row where Joel was, and Jack just came out of the pulpit and came over to me and put his arms around me, and he prayed for me. It took 5 seconds. And what he prayed was this: Father, love him as a father. That was it. When he said that, my whole world was turned upside down and changed. All of a sudden I was swept up into the arms of my Heavenly Father. Every bit of pain, every bit of guilt, every bit of hurt, every bit of shame, everything that was in me that was not of God, even after 20 years, got poured out on the floor in tears. For an hour I cried my heart out, and for an hour all I cried was, God, if you're a father, will you be my daddy and can I be your kid? Now, how would you feel if you were there and all of a sudden Steve was on the floor in front of all you, blubbering away, saying, "Oh, will you be my daddy? Can I be your son?" You'd think, well, he's got Heinz's 57 varieties. Maybe he needs to be delivered. You see, when the Father comes upon you, when the Father really touches you, your whole world changes. And so what God did was this. He took somebody who was totally fatherless to tell other people about him as a father. How cool is that? How cool is that? How cool is that? And so I made this transition from not having any identity, not knowing who I was, not having any sense of self-worth, to suddenly I am of worth and I am more than important in this universe. And you know what? I suddenly found after a while, it all started in heaven. It's where it all started. I'll tell you why. This is what Isaiah says in the Message version of the Bible. This is Isaiah 14, verses 12 to 19. And Isaiah is prophesying to the king. And all of a sudden the prophecy is not about the king, it's about Lucifer. Interesting, isn't it? That this prophecy is brought about Lucifer. And And God calls Lucifer Babylon. And this is what God says. What had come down is this, O Babylon, day star, son of dawn. That's what he was known as in heaven. Lucifer was known as the day star, the son of dawn. Flat on your face in the underworld mud, you famous for flattering nations. So God says, I've cast you down flat on your face in mud. You said to yourself, I'll climb to heaven. I'll set my throne above the stars of God. I'll run the assembly of angels, the meets on sacred Mount Zaphon. I'll climb up to the top of the clouds. I'll take over as king of the universe. What an arrogant angel. That's what Lucifer said. Defy my worlds. I will make myself better than anything. I will be better than God. And this is what the prophecy says to Lucifer. But you didn't make it, did you? Instead of climbing up, you came down. Down with the underground dead, down to the abyss of the pit. People will stare amused. Can this be the one who terrorised earth and its kingdoms, turned earth into a moonscape, wasted its cities, shut up its prisoners to a living death? People are going to say, is this guy called Lucifer, is this the one who did all this? Lucifer's thrown out of heaven because defy thy wills. He said in his heart, I will, I will, I will. And when we say in our heart, we're going to do something which is opposed to God, we are talking like an orphan. I'm going to tell you why you're an orphan. Turn to the person next to you. You're an orphan tonight. You're an orphan. Okay? You are an orphan because in John 14:18, God says, I will not leave you orphans anymore, I will come to you. That's what he says. Now get this. Here's Lucifer. He's in the presence of God. He knows perfect love. He's all of a sudden he's sinful. And God says, because you said in your heart, and iniquity was found in your heart, sin was found in your heart, I'm going to cast you down. I'm going to cast you down. And so he casts him down to earth. Now the moment Lucifer is thrown out of heaven, thrown out of the Father's presence, who is his Father? God. God is his Father in heaven. You all agree? So when he's thrown out of heaven and thrown out of the presence of his Father, he is what? Fatherless. He is now fatherless. And if he's fatherless, he doesn't have an identity, he doesn't know what his name is, he doesn't have an inheritance, and he doesn't know where he's going. He's an orphan. And so the very first orphan in the universe was a bloke called Lucifer. Aren't you glad about that? Well, he shouldn't be, because he's the cause of all the trouble. And so he gets cast down to earth. Now, you all know the story of Adam and Eve, don't you? Adam is fashioned in the dirt with the hands of God. And so Adam is fashioned. And God is kneeling down and he's fashioning Adam. And all of a sudden he breathes into Adam. Now he doesn't stand away from Adam and go, he breathes into him, he gives him the kiss of life. And all of a sudden, this piece of dirt, which has been fashioned by the hand of God, comes to life. And the eyes open. Now Adam comes to life. What is the first thing Adam sees? What is the first thing he sees? His father. He sees his father. God is his father. He sees Dad. Very first thing he sees. And so he lives in a sinless state. In the presence of his father. No clothes, totally naked. In the presence of his father in a sinless state. Who else lived like that? A guy called Lucifer. Now he was cast down to earth. Now Lucifer knows that he's never ever going to experience his Father's love again. He's never ever going to be in the presence of God again in the way he was before he was cast down. He knows that he's an orphan. So what does Lucifer do? I can't get to Dad. I can't get to him. But I'll tell you what, Adam. I'm going to turn you into an orphan and have you cast out of this garden and see how you like it, chump. See? That's what Lucifer thinks. So when he's cast out of it, but he has a name change. He's not known as Lucifer anymore, he's known as who? Satan. And the angels that are thrown out with him are not known as lovely angels anymore, they're known as demons. So they're all orphans. And so he comes along, he can't get at Dad. He can't get at the Father anymore. He comes up with a plan. I'm going to set a trap. I'm going to lay a trap. Now listen, mate. I know you were cast down with me, but you are going to like this trap. It's a snicker. You watch what I'm going to get up to. Adam, you are in deep trouble. Because I'm going to choose Eve as the one who trips the trap. So Satan says, I can't get at Dad, but I can get at his kids. And I can turn them into orphans and have them fatherless and have them without an inheritance and have them without a name and have them not knowing the Father's love. So he lays a trap. There's a dumb serpent crawling across the ground. So Satan says, serpent, come here. So he leaps into the serpent. Now the serpent's innocent, isn't it? Yes? Yes? So he lays a clever trap. Now I'm sure when they fell into this trap they didn't know what the consequences were going to be. When I was in Vietnam, one of my jobs in Vietnam was to lay booby traps for the VC. So we used to booby trap their little trails and that, and we killed quite a lot of them with these booby traps. Now the booby traps, and then when I was in the police force as a bomb squad commander, I did a world trip. I went around the world to all the bomb squads around the world, studying terrorist devices. And the one thing that I knew about terrorist devices is every terrorist bomb was made to look like it was innocent, and it was designed to get the curiosity of the curious. And so when I trained police in those sorts of things, I would lay bombs for them that said to them, pick it up. And I used to catch them out every time. Actually, I used to like doing that. But he lays this trap for them. And God said this to Adam, to Eve, from the tree of the garden you may eat freely, but from the tree of knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for the day that you eat from it you will surely die. So that's the instruction that God gives to Adam, to Eve. And Eve comes along, and I'm not sure whether she told Adam straight away or whether she kept it to herself. But the devil was listening, and so he lays a trap. And the trap was, I'll change one word only. One word only. Just one word. God didn't say, you will surely die. God actually said, you will surely not die. So he slips one word in there. And then he follows it up with the word not changes the whole of Eve's thinking. And then Eve is then presented with, see, if you eat from the tree, it's not going to kill you. Because God said you will surely not die. So it's okay to eat from the tree. And when she saw that the tree was pleasant and it was edible, she went and took the fruit and ate it, and she gave it to her husband who was standing there, who was a miserable, silent wuss. Her husband was out of it. He said nothing. He knew what God said, and he watched his wife disobey the very thing that God said. He watched his wife disobey. And then guilt comes upon them, shame. And they go and hide, and they suddenly are aware of their nakedness, and they put fig leaves on. And God says, calls out from them, "Where are you?" And they present themselves to him. And God said, "Who told you to do that? Who told you to do that? Put fig leaves on. To change yourself from a child of mine to an orphan. Who told you to do that?" And so God knows now that if they eat from that tree, because they've disobeyed him and iniquity is found in their heart, they're going to spend the whole of eternity in a downward spiral of degradation of sin. That's where they put themselves. How many of you know that sin is not really good for you? I know some of you agree with me, and some of you couldn't give a toss. Because you're still living in sin, but it's all going to turn upside down and turn them up, let me tell you. Some of you are not even going to make 30. If you don't, you start becoming sons and daughters of God. So what happens? Let me tell you what happens. Suddenly they're cast out of the garden, but before they're cast out, God brings a prophecy that Eve is going to know the pain of childbirth, that Adam has to fashion everything out of the earth by the sweat of his brow. Put yourself in Adam and Eve's position. You've been living in the presence of the Father, perfect love. You know who you are. The inheritance is the whole of the earth because God asked you to make a garden of it and populate it. There's your inheritance. And all of a sudden, God shows you the good door. God says, "Adam, you're out of here. Out there is total desolation. There is nothing. There is nothingness. It is total desolation. There is nothing." And that's where I'm throwing you now. And you can take her with you. But Adam says, but this woman you gave me, it's all her fault. Blokes have been blaming women ever since. And so God throws them out of the garden. Now listen, get this into your head. All of a sudden, you leave paradise, and out there, beyond that wall, there's nothing. There's no trees, there's nothing. There is absolutely nothing. If you read the Bible and you understand Genesis, that is void. There's nothing out there. There's just the garden. There is nothing outside there. The garden's here, out there is nothing. And so God says, out you go. And it says in Genesis that he asked them to leave. And then the next verse you see, God forced them to go. So it's obvious that Adam didn't want to go, and Eve didn't want to go because they didn't know what they'd done wrong. But he forced them out. And all of a sudden, here they are, two people who knew the power of God, they knew the love of the Father, they knew the beauty of his presence, and now they're cast into utter nothingness to notch out their existence. they become orphans. And the devil's going, yay! Come on, you demons! Come on! Let's hear it! Yay! Yay! That's what would have happened. Because all of a sudden, now he's got mankind orphans. Now he's got mankind without identities, without an inheritance, without a name, with nothing. That's why God says in John 14:18, I will not leave you orphans anymore. I'm not going to leave you the way I left Adam and Eve in the garden. I'm going to give you a name, I'm going to give you an inheritance, and I'm going to give you an identity. The identity is that you are my son. Your name is son. And your inheritance is exactly the inheritance that Jesus Christ gets from the Father. That's your inheritance. There's a mansion waiting for you. And God is the Father that you always needed but never knew. So it's got nothing to do with anything other than realising that God is your Father. And that you're an orphan no more. I will not leave you orphans. I will come to you. And then the last two verses of the Old Testament. Listen to what God says. The last two verses. Behold, I'm going to send you Elijah, the prophet, before the coming of the great and terrible day of the Lord. And that's on its way. He will restore the hearts of the fathers to their children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers, so that I will not come and curse your land. That's both on the spiritual plane and on the natural plane. Having our relationships restored to our earthly parents and having our relationships restored to our Father in heaven. You know, I grew up with orphan mindset, with orphan ways, with orphan speech. Because I didn't have a father. You can live in your father's house and never know his love. You can come to this church, you can know Jesus, you can know the Holy Spirit, and you can die in this church never knowing the Father's love. What a tragedy that is. What a tragedy that would be. For you to die not knowing the love of the Father. I'm not talking about a concept, I'm talking about a reality. It's so real that if you dare to let the Father embrace you as his child, you'll never be the same again. Never. Look, there's no better place to be found than in the Father's arms. There's no better place to be found than in his house. For you guys that don't know the Father's love, some of you may not even know Jesus Christ as Lord and Saviour. What I'm saying to you tonight is, tonight is the night that you put it right. Put it right. You determine that you're going to be a son of God. You're going to be a daughter of God. You're going to put your sinful ways aside. Start living a life where the Father blesses. You know, if you stop doing what you're doing, you'll be a magnet for the Father's blessing. And he will chase you down and he will bless you to the point where you have to say, Dad, will you stop blessing me? But if you don't, the Bible says then there's a whole pile of curses that are going to come on your life. They're not real good. The Father is the Father who will never cease to be Father. And he loves his children. There's going to be two things tonight. Those who need to make the transition from an orphan to a child of the Father, in salvation or otherwise. And healing, because Dad heals. My Father heals. God heals. If you're sick in your body, I'm going to anoint you with oil. We're going to pray for total 100% healing in your body, to have you restored back to the way God created you in your mother's womb. You believe that? I'm totally given to it. That's my dad. That's my father. And I can't do anything other than do what my Father wants me to do. All right? So we can have Mr. Music Man. He lives across, he needs healing. Those of you who need healing in your body, I want you to come. And those of you who need to really get square on with God and really make a stand for God and say, I'm not going to live this life, I'm not living anymore. I want you to come too, because God wants to see you make a stand for Him. All right? You guys that come out and make a stand for God, your friends are going to hate your guts, because you're not going to do what they want you to do anymore. Is that cool? Good. Okay.